Welcome to Session 2 of Strokes of Love, Rosemaling Hints, Tips, and Demonstrations. I'm Betty Dow. I've been teaching for 40 years, and I'm going to do the stroke work. On my classes, especially my beginners and intermediates, I work with strokes. And these are the strokes right here. There's the C, the S, and then you have your liner. You have the filbert brush, and you have a liner brush. When I first started painting, the first 11 years, it was in oils, and I used sable brushes. And then after that, I got into the synthetic or the combination. Right now, I'm using the Josonia Sure Touch 4 and 6 filbert and her liner. I'm also going to use the acrylic paint. First thing I'm going to do is put some red on my palette here. And for my strokes. I'm going to use my 6 filbert. And on your filbert, on your brush, this, just before the hair, is the ferrule. And the brush is put in there and then it's crimped. And the one I'm using, the filbert, is square on the side and round on the end. It's a combination of a square and round brush. And I especially like this for blending and to do double and triple loads. Okay, I'm going to dress the brush, which means I'm going to pull paint into the brush. And I'm pulling it in on one side, I'm tipping it over and putting it on the other side. So that I have plenty of paint and yet I still have the shape of the brush. If I would take the brush and use it this way, I could make a line. So think about that when we're doing the C's and S's, and I'll mention it. Also, I put my hand there to balance. Years ago, we had the wooden things that you would use, but you have this, and you can use it for boxes, for trunks, for plates, and it's always with you. So I've got the paint on it, thin, pressure, pressure, thin, thin, pressure, pressure, thin, thin, pressure, pressure, thin. Once you do one way, then you do it the other way. You'll notice that I have this in a plastic sleeve, and the reason for that is that students can use it, and then when they're done, you wipe it off and you've got it again. So I have a C stroke coming one way, and then I have a C stroke the other way. This is your circle. Once you get your strokes, everything is so much smoother and easier. Now we have the S, which is thin, pressure, pressure, thin. Thin, pressure, pressure, thin. I always think if I put eyes in here, it would look like a pelican. And then the same way from the other side. And it's thin, pressure, pressure, let up and bring it around and follow through. Then you have circles. You've got half circles. I'm still working with my filbert. And then you have a full circle, which you can take 2 halves. And if you put the circle and some dots, you have a filler flower. Here is a sample of putting filberts together. Put one and then stick another under it. And these I use when I, like I said, do the double load of that. Like right here, press it down, let it fan out, bring it around, let up and come to that chisel edge. Press, bring it around. Then you've got it here the same way. Let up and bring to the chisel edge. Once I have them using that, then I go to the liner brush. And when I use the liner brush, I usually use either water to thin it out a little bit, or I like the flow medium. Because the liner, when you use the liner, you want it to work like ink, but not real runny and out of control, just thinner. When I did the filbert, I didn't use anything. Okay, so you're going to thin, pressure, pressure, thin, and bring it around. And then make some towards yourself. And you can always turn the piece you're working on so that you don't have to be a contortionist. So you do lines to you and away from you. Because when you're working on a plate or a box or even a trunk, you need to be able to do that. Then you have your cross hatching. The center line is first, and then work down. Then you work up. Then you put it in the same way here. It goes back to the old churches, Europe, that they, in the church, they would have cross hatching and things in their paintings and in their carvings. And the folklore said that this was to keep the evil spirits out. So I don't know if it does or not, but I'm not taking a chance, and I put cross hatching in the center of my flowers and in various places. This cross hatching was used with a scroll coming down on each side and the cross hatching between it. You have teardrops. When I'm filling this brush, I fill it, but you don't want it to be a glob of paint. And think about this round brush as having 2 or 3, even 4 sides, and turn it in your hand and fill it. Then tip the brush. Don't twist it, just tip it to get the point. Then you're going to do a center one, press down, and then one on either side. And you're going to make them to you and away from you. Here I'm going to do a stem line. Comes around. Then I'm going to put the tear on it, but I come up the stem and place it on, like it says, 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. A lot of times in the beginners, what I see is I see a stem line, And then I see this left hand or right hand turns, which you want to follow the line. And once we practice that, then we take it and put it all together by using your S stroke, two C strokes, and you have the tulip. And then you have the round flower, and decide, depending on the size, if it's a filler flower or it could be the main flower. And here's the same way on this. A C stroke, a C stroke, another C stroke. Here's where you do the filberts. And then you use your liner and outline and put that on. Okay, so when I'm done with it, I just wipe it off and it's ready for the next time. And practicing your strokes is very important. When I do a class, even intermediate, I have them practice strokes for maybe 5 minutes before we start our project. This warms you up and gets you used to the brush. The brush is your friend, and the more you're able to understand what it can do, the nicer your strokes will look. I also have the back that I use for them, and that is just borders. The first couple of years that I painted, I did my Rosemaling, but I never put a border on. And I was in Gary Elbrick's class, and he asked me what border I was going to put. And I said, well, I'm done. And he says, no, it's like a picture. You frame it. Without a border, it just goes off the piece. Now you have to have a border in all your Rosemaling. So he gave me pages of borders. This one I copied from him. And so right here is a teardrop and a dot between it. Here's teardrops. Here's an S stroke with tears, an S stroke with another tear that way. And then we come to the Nordic border. And for the first 2 years, I put a Nordic border on everything. For some reason, I like this. I thought it went with Rosemaling, I guess. So it's what it is it's an S, and it comes up, and it has a hatch. Thin pressure up, and they're all S strokes. And it's, a variety of things. And what I do is all my students have notebooks. So we have this plastic that they put everything in. And then when they're done, before they leave, you wipe it off and you're ready to practice again. I have found this very helpful with my students, and they always appreciate it. That takes us as far as the stroke work. As I said, I was using the Josonia acrylics and the mediums. And like for the first 11 years, I was an oil painter. And I went to a seminar that Gary had in Madison, Wisconsin, and the Josonia acrylics had just come out, and he had studied with her and tried them and decided that everybody was going to try it. There were, I think, 30 of us in the seminar. And being a friend, he says, Betty, he says, you've got to try it. And I said, I don't think so. I'm an oil painter. And he says, but I want you to. He said, you're editor of the Vesterheim Rosemaling letter. You have to try different things and report on it. And I said, okay, I'll do one thing. This is 5 days. We have 5 projects. And I had all my oil paints and brushes with me. And what sold me on it is he had 2 pieces, the same designs. And he asked me, he says, which did I do in oils and which did I do in acrylics? And I says, no problem. That is an oil piece, not this one. He says, no, they're both in acrylics. I says, how? He says, this one isn't varnished. This one I varnished. And I said, oh, okay, I'll try it. So at the end of the 5 days, I did 5 projects, all in acrylics. And for the next year, I taught 2 classes a week in acrylics and 2 classes in oil. And at the end of the year, I went strictly acrylics due to my allergies, and I found that it was so much easier. Being an oil painter, I found that this particular paint and the mediums gave me the same effect that my oil paints did. So that's why I've stuck with it. So 40 years of teaching and the last years with the acrylics. Now I'd like to show you something using the brushes. Let me clean my brush. That's the one thing you want to do, is make sure you clean your brushes and take care of them. Because if it gets the acrylic, dries on it, and it gets hard, then you've got an expensive brush or a cheap brush, whatever, that isn't as good. It doesn't have the edge or the tip. I'm going to use my book, Strokes of Love. And what I found out, it was after I printed it, that these gift bags that I was getting at the dollar store, 2 for $1. And I could put those in, tape it, and transfer the design on. You've got to line it up. And then I have my tape, and I tape it so that it doesn't move. Usually when I do anything, I have tracing paper, and I put the design on a piece of tracing paper, and then I transfer that on. But I found this was really neat, so it was a happy mistake, as my granddaughter would say. So now I'm going to slip this is transfer paper, and it comes in black or light. Because I'm on dark blue, I'm going to use the light. And I'm going to slip that in. I'm going to take this up for a minute. And then I'm going to use a stylus. And you can use a pencil, but I use the stylus and draw the design on. And when I draw the design, I just do the outline. This is just a guideline. come down, follow through. Then you have here, follow through here, come around, and that. And I always tell my students, make sure before you go too far, after you get the first one or two, to make sure that you've transferred it on. And yes, the design is on. I was teaching my granddaughter the other day, and we were putting patterns on, and she was done and I was done, and I looked at mine and I had it on upside down, and or backwards rather, and mine didn't transfer and hers did. So even after 40 years, you can, make a mistake. So I'm going to use this particular pattern. I've already transferred it to save time, and then I'll demonstrate this part. Here's what it's going to look like when I'm done. Also, I've got a bag here, this pink bag. My daughter was having a birthday. The gift didn't fit in the little one, so I found that bag, and burgundy is one of her favorite colors besides blue, so I put burgundy and white on that. Then I have this second one, blue one, is a design out of this book again. And then here's a red one. Here's the design on it, and here's what it looks like when it's done. This is in the book too. And then over there is one more, and another one from the book. And I just thought this was really neat because I can shove the bag in and transfer it, paint it. It'll take you more than 30 minutes, but in 30 minutes, it's done for me. And then I give it a coat of glaze medium, and it's ready to give. And a lot of positive feedback on the bags. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this one is when I do these bags, you can do it in many colors. I mean, I've done it all colors. I've done it, one color. I'm going to stick this back in here. I can use it later. And by the way, this is a wet palette. It's really looks cruddy, but the paint's still good. It has paper underneath and foam, and it's wet with distilled water, and then paper on top. And I have dark middle light of blue, yellow, dark middle light red, and then my greens, my white and the black that I used on another project. A wet palette like this, if you use the distilled water, lasts for about 2 weeks. It was always neat with my oils because those lasted forever. So I was concerned about the acrylics, but and it depends on the projects you're doing. Okay, what I'm going to do is, oh great, I already had it out, is to turn this around so I stay out of the red. Okay, I'm going to use my 6 filbert, and I've got a little magic mix here which blends it, and I've got a little bit of that on the brush, and I'm going to put titanium white always put your cap back on or it'll dry out on you. Okay. And I'm going to side load it, which means that it's like 4 hair in and it's only on the side. And I see I have red, I got into the red paint, so I need to get that off of here. The red paint that was there. Okay, side load it again. And then, excuse me, I will blend one way and then the other way. Your brush has both sides, so go back and forth. And when I come back, I'm going to go back into this. Okay, I'll start down here. And you can go back and forth. And the drawing line is just a guideline. I put it on and then things get bigger and all of a sudden I get paint somewhere and I have to put in a filler flower or something like that. So, you know, this is just a guideline. And this is sort of a fun thing. And then you're coming around here and you've got the knob, which is a C stroke, comes down into that. Give yourself a little knob here. And this is just putting the bases on, and then you're going to line it. You've got a C stroke here. And then you've got your tulip, and you've got an S here, an S here, you have an S here, and here is the C. And then you have some more leaves here. And they're just C strokes. And they're going to be, the lines are going to overlay on the scroll. One thing about this design, it's Telmark with a little bit of Roglin in it, I would say. And it's asymmetrical, which means it isn't symmetrical. This is the root, and everything has to come from the root. And if you follow the line, you'll see everything comes from there. Even this comes from there. This comes around. This is in the back and comes up. This will come from here and out. And these filler flowers do the same thing. So you always have a root that your Rosemaling comes from. I'm going to do a little bit of this flower, and then I'll do some line work to give you the idea on that. This is the main flower. This is sort of a secondary, and then you have filler flowers. And you're just going to go up, you're going to dip, and when you dip, you put pressure on, and then bring it down. And I got one more here. Okay, let me see this one. This one. Okay. You have these little leaves on this filler flower. So you just do a little line this way, a little line that way. They come to a point, and you'll use your liner to finish them off. And we have this little, I always like sticking a heart in somewhere. And that's a little C here and a C here. And then the liner will finish that up. And let's see these, yeah. Okay, let's use the liner. And then I'll use the flow medium, which will, or you can use water, but the flow medium keeps it some consistency, and yet it flows off the brush. That's why it's flow medium, I guess. Okay. Out here, I'm going to outline the leaf, a C and a C. You got another C and another C, and then the center line. And you go around here and you have another C, C. And this one will go this way. And then you have C. You have stem lines here, comes up. And it'll come around here. Notice that there's a blue spot here, so I'm going to have to improvise there. And then this comes out of here and up here. And you have a little tear here and one here. Got a fat tear here that got sort of out of shape, I think. And then the line, stem line, it's still coming from there. It's behind this leaf. your scrolls. This is a scroll. This is a flower. And on your scrolls, just outline them. And then flip off the edge. And you've got scroll that comes down here. And I'm lining both sides of it so that it'll stand out. And blue's my favorite color, so I love working on blue bags. But I try not to stick mainly to one color and get in a rut. When I first started painting, it seemed like the first year or so, everything was black-green. And then a couple of years, there was one year, the earth tones. And for some reason, everything was earth tone. One year it was Norse blue. Now I just like doing it all. And then you bring it around the knob. Sometimes I'll put a dot in my scrolls in the knob. Sometimes I don't. Just depends on the mood I'm in. Okay, and then using this as my guideline. This one has the stem line here, or the liner of the scroll here. And then it has a stem line with two. This flower comes out of here, and then it goes up into here. And you have your little leaves that you're going to, a little too much paint on that one. And this one I'll have coming off that way. And these I have coming off the other way to stay away from the stem. And then you have two tiers here. And you've got more outlining. You have get my two before rather. Okay. Side load this. And in some flowers, petals. You have another one down here. And you're going to do the same to the center. And then when you get to finishing it up, you've got dots. And what I usually do is my liner brush is thinner. And you can either put the paint on the tip of your brush, which I did for many, many years. And then teaching in Florida and working with decorative painters, they would mix their paint and use the tip of their brush. And I got used to that, and it's great for beginners and especially children. So you put the dots around. And I notice I have and the centers of the flowers. You've got, more dots. And there's a lot more lines that have to go in this. But this just gives you an idea. And the thing is to have fun and enjoy it. Because as I always say, my Rosemaling, my art, is my therapy. I can come and paint and thoroughly enjoy it. And then and this is what it looks like when it's finished. And make sure you sign your name. I had somebody contact me. They had a piece of Rosemaling, and it was just signed Betty and had a date on it. And, I saw it, and I says, yes, that was, because I recognized the style, and I says, yes, that's one of my Ariel bricks. And I said, in the early years, I just put Betty and the date, like 88 or 78 or whatever. And I says, then after I started teaching, I start putting B. Dow and signing it that way. And that's the way I've been signing it ever since. So today you had a taste of stroke work, how to put what the brushes are, the paint, and how to use the paint and the brushes. And I hope you've enjoyed this. This is session 2. In session 3, I would like to, let's see, have you got the book, the last page there? I've got it. Here. I've got this taped. Next session, I'm going to talk about the colors that we use in Rosemaling, demonstrate leaves, scrolls, tulips, other flowers, and leaves. This is the painted page. This is the sample page, or the page that you can stick in plastic or make a copy on your copy machine and, do that. But it's a great practice sheet. And I always do this with beginners, is we do this before we get into, any projects. So I hope you have enjoyed this today, and that you'll go to my website, rosemalingbybettydow.com, and you can see some of the articles I have in there, some of the projects that we have. And as I said, next week will be strokes, And then the following week, we're going to do, let's see, what did I have down here? We're going to get into fabric, and then we're going to get into glass, and then we're going to do ornaments. So it's touching upon a lot of things. And I'd also like to do something for the kids. I've taught brownies and children's after-school art, and they're like little sponges. I started Rose, my granddaughter, who was 6 when she started painting with me, and she picked up everything. I mean, she's like a little sponge. She's 12 now, 11 rather, going on 20. And but when I tell her the colors and the palette and the mediums, you better remember what you tell her, because the next time she painted with me, she knew, even if I'd forget. So thank you again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. Visit my website and try it. You might like it. There's so much in art that can relax you. And yes, it does take a while, but it takes practice. And as my husband, I'd say practice, practice, and then my husband would say, and more practice. So after 40 years, I'm still practicing. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you. God bless.